Take one step, and God will meet you there. A letter written by UCC conference ministers across the United States was the first step in our journey. This letter encouraged action and gave the reader examples of how we as the church could respond to the children who are showing up at the U.S. border, fleeing from their homes in Central America. The next step was a comment about what we in the Indiana-Kentucky Conference might do, followed by the response, rather cheekily, I might say, let's go to Arizona. It wasn't for me, just so you know. Within 24 hours, a journey had been planned. Just a little over a week later, on August 4th, we put the last bag in the vehicle, fastened seat belts, and began the long drive to Tucson, Arizona. This morning, we invite you on a journey of a lifetime, one that has only begun. We start at the border. The border is not just a place, but it is the thinnest line between human beings where the horror and beauty of life intertwine. Let me say that again. The border is not just a place, but it is the thinnest line between human beings where the horror and beauty of life intertwine. This is indeed what we encountered when we crossed the border into Mexico. The border, just a line, one where you can have your right foot in the United States and your left in Mexico. Yet this line represents separation and despair for many families. This line has encouraged the dehumanization of people who are children of God, just as we are. That means, if you follow the equation through, they are our brothers and sisters. We were given the opportunity to meet people who had been pushed out of the United States through what I called last Sunday a cattle chute. On the Mexican side of the line, we stepped into a cantina operated by the Kino Border Initiative. We met Father Pete, a Jesuit priest who runs the place. He talked to us about social sin. He spoke about how we, in our complacency, in our mindless participation in a system that breaks down people's spirits and dehumanizes them, we are responsible for actions almost too terrible to voice. He said that we must take the message of our brothers and sisters back and tell their stories so the injustice will stop. Along with Father Pete, we served breakfast to people who had nothing to eat, no clothes, besides the ones on their backs, and no money. And yet here, in the midst of certain desperation, we experienced the love of God. Here, with the mural of the Last Supper painted on a wall above toilets and sinks, we celebrated communion with tortillas and black beans. I know I saw Jesus in the cantina that day. It was in Nogales, the town, if that is what you would call it, where we heard the story of a young woman who, when apprehended trying to cross the border, was stripped and endured a body cavity search. Then, as if this treatment was not demeaning enough, this tiny woman was brought before the judge in shackles, handcuffs, and ankle cuffs attached by heavy chains to another chain around her waist, weighed down, quite literally, by our justice system. This woman, who wanted only to be reunited with her young child, was treated with such disrespect, and yet she will try again and again and again to cross the thin line that keeps her from her family, her dream to be reunited with her child. Here on the border, in the steps between Nogales, Mexico, and Nogales, Arizona, where rejection and despair are experienced every day, hope lives. The journey continues. Crossing the border does not guarantee success for those who make it past the border patrol. There is still more of a desert to cross. Samaritans who meet at Good Shepherd United Church of Christ trek daily out into the desert to refill water stations that they have set up so that people might have something to drink in the scorching heat. Travelers never have enough water. Just try carrying a couple of gallon jugs for any distance, and you will understand the impossibility of carrying enough water to take you through the desert. This group of faithful servants has saved many a life, found men and women slumped over in the cruel desert heat, not able to move on because they are so dehydrated, and their bodies so brutally beaten up by the heat, the plant life, and sometimes even people. This year, to date, 98 people have been known to have died in the desert. We went onto what is called the Migrant Trail one day. Let me say that it is really no trail at all. It is a vast area covered by cactus that attack you with their painful spikes and other prickly plants. We all experienced that. And those prickly plants that slap you in the face as you walk through them. It is an understatement to say it is difficult terrain. We were told we would find things people had left behind on this trail, like the clothes they had walked the many miles wearing. They would have carried another set of clothes to change into once they were close to freedom, so it was not immediately obvious they had been walking for days in the desert. There are other things left behind too, like a small book in Spanish. I clumsily read the first line. En el principio era el verbo, y el verbo era con Dios, y el verbo era Dios. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Mothers in Mexico had painstakingly embroidered tortilla cloths for their sons and daughters to carry tortillas in for their difficult journey. These cloths were found abandoned in the desert too, along with pictures and shoes and other personal items, all left behind. Along the trail, we encountered 3 grave markers: a man, a woman, and a child. Presumably a family had died just steps away from a wealthy gated retirement community, feet away from plush golf courses and swimming pools. They were found when there was nothing left of them but their bones. They were nameless. They were invisible. They died trying to realize their dream for a better life, perhaps trying to find a safer place to raise their child. We will never know. Their journey ended among the cactus and sand, all alone. There we prayed. We recited the litany to those who have died in the desert.
In memory of those who went to look for a better life, yet only encountered death. And of those who risked everything and lost everything. Of those who went with hope in their eyes and challenge in their souls. The sun burned them, and the desert devoured them, and the dust erased their names and faces. In memory of those who never returned, we offer these flowers and say with the deepest respect, your thirst is our thirst. Your hunger is our hunger. Your pain is our pain. Your anguish, bitterness, and agony are also ours. We are a cry for justice, that no one would ever have to leave their land, their beliefs, their dead, their children, their parents, their family, their roots, their culture, their identity. From out of the silence comes a voice that speaks, so that no one will ever have to look for their dream in other lands, so that no one would ever have to go to the desert and be consumed by loneliness.
There, just steps away from a better life, hope's weak breath survives, along with the barrel cactus that tilts just enough to point the way for those who continue to walk the migrant trail.
A voice in the desert cries out, education for all, opportunity for all, jobs for all, bread for all, freedom for all, justice for all. We are a voice that will not be lost on the desert, that insists that the nation give equal opportunity to a dignified and fruitful life to all its children.
The last leg of our journey in Tucson took us to Southside Presbyterian Church, where we stood together with Rosa and her family. For those who were here last Sunday, Rosa's story is not new. I spoke about her situation last week. Rosa has lived in the United States for 15 years. She has 2 young boys and a husband. But Rosa and her husband are active community members. Her boys go to school alongside their neighbors and play Little League baseball and have dreams of playing in the major leagues one day. This is the only life they know. Rosa was pulled over by police in 2010 in a traffic stop. During this encounter, authorities found that Rosa did not have the proper paperwork to remain in the country. Now, 4 years later, Rosa has been told she must leave the United States. She is being deported. But Rosa, like so many of the people we met, is determined to remain with her family. So there, on August 7th, she walked into Southside Presbyterian Church, where she will receive sanctuary. She will not step out of the church until her case has been deferred. There, encircled by people who have chosen to live out God's love by standing in solidarity with her, their sister, Rosa heard these words. Rosa, your life is no longer in the hands of immigration officials. Your life is in the hands of God and in the community of faith that surrounds you. Hope. Found in the love and compassion of God. Hope found in the safety of church sanctuary. En el principio era el verbo, y el verbo era con Dios, y el verbo era Dios. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This journey began on August 4th, but it is far from over. I cannot erase from my mind the words Father Pete used describing social sin. In our complacency, in our mindless participation in a system that breaks down people's spirits and dehumanizes them, we are responsible for actions almost too terrible to voice. But we must speak up. We must take the message of our brothers and sisters back and tell their stories so the injustice will stop. We are home, safe and sound, but we cannot say that for thousands of our brothers and sisters who long to be together with their families, who will not let anything stop them from pushing forward. Not the thinnest line between human beings we call the border, not a desert showing no mercy, not an immigration system that dehumanizes and separates. So, what's next? I don't have the answers. But what would you do? What would you do, Karen, if Roger one day was picked up on the street and taken away? What would you do, Steve and Sherry, if Melanie and Courtney decided that they needed to find a better job, and so they left you to walk through the desert? What would you do? What would you do, Linda, if your grandchildren were whisked away without a moment's warning? What would each of us do if someone we loved was taken from us and sent somewhere they knew little about, without food or clothing or money? We need to think about that. It seems overwhelming. But in a prayer written for Oscar Romero, we are reminded. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something, and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own. In these words and in the lives of the people whose stories we have told, there is hope. Take one step, and God will meet you there. May we do just that. Amen.